Welcome back from the break. That was a very fun first half of the episode with two young entrepreneurs. And I want to bring on our very next guest, and I want to keep this ball rolling. Now, Preston Roberts of ACS Airsoft is a good friend of mine, a client, and he is a perfect model of what it is to be an initiative driven young entrepreneur who can fight their way to success. So, Preston, I want to thank you for coming on the show today, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely, Ryan. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to see where our conversations go.
Well, good. What I want to do is ask a question to you, very similar to what I asked the last couple of guys, and that's a little bit about starting your journey off. And so I want to ask you, the entrepreneur that you wanted to start your own business. At what point did you just realize that was your path, and what factors led up to you just taking that leap to be a business owner and entrepreneur?
Sure. So a lot of what led me to be an entrepreneur of my own and that self-interest was kind of driven up through my upbringing. A lot of my family members had businesses of their own, were willing to take risks and try things that didn't work. And I think that influenced a lot of my decisions on what I wanted to do in life. But my industry is very different. My grandfather had a clothing store. My mom has a bridal shop. But as you can tell behind me, I just was fascinated with guns, and I have a passion for airsoft. So I saw a demand for something that wasn't available to us. It's a niche hobby in our area, and I wanted to fulfill that for myself. It was something I wanted to play, I wanted to get into, but there was nowhere to go. So to fill that gap, it allowed me to have the creative freedom to make decisions on my own, have critical thinking, be able to try things that other bosses may not let you do. If you fit, a corporate mold, you might not have that flexibility between jobs and tasks. I'd be head down on one particular medium, and I like being able to change hats in that manager role and problem solve. And I think I really found that pivotal point, that like aha moment, that everyone looks for. It was during an interview for an internship when I was in college. During my MBA, Target was on campus, and they were looking for a regional manager for an internship position. I believe it was unpaid, but it came with all the bells and whistles. If you did great there, you got the job. So absolutely, I was going to apply and see where this goes. Keep every opportunity open. The end of that interview, the interview went great. They asked me if you had any questions for us, and my question to them at that time was, why did you send out the interview questions in advance? And they had sent interview questions the night before to everyone, and that creates a very rehearsed and non-organic response. And if you're looking for a manager, someone that's going to have to act on their feet in the moment, take care of a crisis, put out a fire, they're going to have to be able to be critical thinkers and be adaptive. And I didn't think they were going to find the right fit for that role by letting people practice in advance. And you could tell the just awe shock on their face when I asked them that. And that's not what they were looking for. And I knew I wasn't going to be the yes man. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to think outside of the box and push the boundaries and try things, but be willing to learn and fail, learn from your failures, be willing to fail and be willing to try new things. And I see that reaffirmed through my daughter every day. She's 1.5 and trying things. I'm like, no. And she's like, I'm going to learn. I'm going to figure it out on my own. And now she's going up and down the stairs. And I'm like, okay, if you're trying and learning at this age, then I'm not going to stop trying and learning too. So that was really the moment, though, at my life where I was like, okay, I want to try this on my own. I want to take the risk. I want to go all in. And by that point, I had already had a test bed. There was a proof of concept for me. I was doing this a little bit on the side. It wasn't a full-time job, but later on, it was the commitment there that's like, hey, let's see really where this goes. What's the full opportunity here? And let's go for it.
I love that. That is a great story, and I think it probably resonates with a lot of our viewers. And Preston, I didn't tell you this before, but I challenge most of my viewers, as I did at the beginning of this episode, to watch with pen and paper and take notes. And so anyone listening, if you heard his story, he had generational examples set for him, and he saw that, and that took a lot of the risk and nervousness that it might take out of it. So go find somebody that you can example from.
Absolutely.
And then he went into the corporate mold and said, hey, just based on a single interview, I could tell this was not for me. And then just like the dynamic unfolding nature of an airsoft battle, you have to be able to think quickly on your feet, make adaptations, have a certain skill set with tactics and equipment and tools, and use those not just to win a game, but to apply into a business for life. So I think you're really embodying a lot of that. Going along with that journey, I want to kind of dive in a little bit more about, he had some family examples, and that may not be the answer to this next question, but tell us about who's been your greatest supporter. So when you went in there, you probably had some type of advisor or mentor through your journey. How did their guidance shape you or your business decisions, or how you make decisions?
Absolutely. Speaking on my family's just kind of linear progression of owning businesses and trying new things, I think they were a lot of the influence that got me into the business world. But I think some of my largest supporters and in this topic really comes down to my customers, because when we started, I was 17. Shirley, my best friend, who's now a manager here, who was 18, and we were in high school. I talked about that proof of concept. I mean, an airsoft field to us then was just a couple of pallets. It really wasn't anything but the fact that we had land. And people showed up that we didn't know. And I was like, okay, maybe there's something here. And that snowball effect just kept turning and kept reinvesting in ourselves. But they showed us very early on that they cared for us and valued our relationship as much as we did theirs. And not just in a transactional sense, but like we had this crazy snowstorm right now and flooding just a few days ago, and people from all around the world are messaging us, hey, are you okay? I saw Kentucky was being hit. And so they're active listeners. And even if they're not always engaged with your brand or what's going on right now in real time, the newest product or the latest event or the newest skill set to be learned, they're still paying attention in the background and they do care about you. And I think those relationships have really shaped us for who we are today, because they were with us from the conception through all of our failures, our learning points, the pitfalls of running a business, and that learning curve of, okay, what do we do now with that? How do we take what we've learned and continue to progress it? And, I can remember one of my very early on customers, we didn't have a megaphone. We had no way to make announcements. And he was a football coach. He was like, I'm bringing you my megaphone, and he saw like, hey, I know what it takes to be a leader. You need better tools than what you have now, and I can help you with that. And they've always been invested. And that was day one. And again, people are still checking in on us and making sure that everything's okay. So even outside the transactional part of, having customer relationships, that value and friendship and that personal connection, that's really been the driver and the shaping factor of our business.
I love that so much. And I love that you brought that coach as an example in there, because coaches are some of the most probably profound, impactful, and proven types of leaders, because they just get a recurring system of people to lead. And so I do want to transition to a leadership question, because I love what you just said about your support of your customers, being in touch with the market and the conditions and adapting for them. So let's talk about leadership, and maybe if you have an example of like a defining moment where your leadership just played a critical role. You had some type of challenge or some type of opportunity in your business, and you had to execute leadership in order to move past it or get that done. Can you share an example?
Sure. So I think the biggest learning curve for me, that moment, was the willingness to change. And even in my own habits, it's easy to get comfortable. It's easy to chase a number or a what if scenario. And I don't think that's where you should always have your headspace. I think it's easy to get head down on something and go, if I could learn this skill or teach this to my employee and overcome this challenge, but it'd be easy to micromanage or zoom too close in. So for me, the biggest learning curve is that flexibility and the willingness to change, because change is the only thing that's constant. And you've got to be evolving and you've got to be in tune with what's going on in your industry. So I think looking at it from that point of view is setting up processes. I had a coach or a mentor once tell me, record yourself doing the process in real time. Don't cut it, don't edit it, and then show it to your employees and see if they can match that pace and that, because we're all human. We're going to make errors, and it's easy to narrate like this perfect little scenario, or I can be as efficient as I want to be, but I've been doing it for 10 years, and that's not realistic of a new incoming employee. And so to pass that on, just be authentic to yourself, do it in real time, lead with example. And, one of the things that I had a very hard time getting over was the willingness to learn. I'm always looking for new tools. How can I use this for better efficiencies? How can I use this like alternative for another industry into mine? So like a lot of times I look at escape rooms or amusement parks or other things outside of airsoft and try to adapt it within and, keep it within scale, something reasonable that we can achieve. But you can also get really bogged down, looking for all new information, where the leadership aspect is not just using your head, but using your hands. Get out there, be active, get to work. because that's the difference for me between being a scholar and being a leader. You don't want to be able to just learn how to do something. You got to be able to teach how to do something, and then measure, and after that then teach, measure, and then communicate with your team where they're at and what you would like to see changed. Mr. Schneebly, I don't know if you'll get this reference, but those that can't do teach, and those that can't teach gym. So I don't want to teach a gym class, I want to run an airsoft store. So that's where we're at today.
Well, I like that. And I really appreciate your points on flexibility and how you had to be flexible as a leader. And really, if you guys were paying attention in the audience out there, he went outside his industry to purposely get a scope that is not his own, to get a mindset that is not his own, to get him out of his comfort zone. And then he made those adaptations. And I want to point out another really good high note that you did the recording thing, saying, hey, here's what the process looks like. Here's me doing it with, like you referenced, 10 years of experience. My expectation is not that you can on day one replicate this, but this is the model that you're achieving for. And you've got a video you can reference the entire time till you're achieving at that level. So we've only got just a little bit left for this last question here before we jump to commercial. But was there a specific moment when you just knew that you were going to succeed, that, hey, even though there's going to be more hurdles and obstacles, but I know that from this point on, I've had the realization that this business is going to make it?
That one's really tough. I think you could have asked me a few years ago and I would have told you it was a dollar amount. If I could only achieve this dollar amount to offset my lifestyle and my employees' lifestyles, and that would give me the comfort to stay where I'm at and maintain this long term. But now I feel like, that aha moment is within my personal growth. It's in the willingness to learn and adapt and all these things we've already kind of talked about. But it's the discipline to get up and do the best that you can do every day with what you have. And that doesn't mean fulfilling all your large scale dreams and end goals. If you have a 10-year goal, then you're not going to achieve it tomorrow. You're going to achieve it 10 years, as long as you keep setting that pace and short-term goals to achieve it. But you got to do the best you can do with the tools that you have today. And if you're doing that, you're getting to work, you're staying disciplined, and you're building the confidence in your team. I think that's where the comfort really comes from. I don't think it's, it's like when you're working out and going to the gym, don't get on the scale every day. Stop looking at the numbers every day. You need to know what they mean. It's important to understand them, but it's not something you need to look at every single day in consistency. So,
Well, Preston, let me jump in real quick, because before we move on, I want to make a point about something you said about your aha moment of success was not a number. And you specifically emphasized the mindset of it no longer being a number or a certain level of comfort for me and my employees, but it was a set of actions in the way that I come and grind and look for more and go to succeed and produce on. So I want to stick a pin in that right there, because we're going to ask about how you execute that right after this break. So everyone else, stick with us. We're going to be back with more Pivotal Change and more Preston right after this.